not to turn up to the House of Commons to discuss Iran.
Yeah, and that caused a bit of a stir today because the Prime Minister is now back from his holiday in the Maldives, but still he hasn't been seen. Mystique, I beg your pardon, Mystique. Watch these things closer than I do.
Yeah, a few hundred miles away.
We'll begin with them, and I didn't mean
Yeah,
Just as exclusive, just
somewhere
as
that other
exclusive.
people go on holiday.
Yes, where the real people of this country go.
Anyway, he was back from the Maldives. He hasn't been seen in public.
No,
Mystique. Okay.
Right, we start again.
Start again.
Record again. 1, 2, 3, go.
Is this
He's
live?
back from the Maldives, and he hasn't been seen in public for 11 days because he's been on holiday in the Maldives for 11 days. Previous to that, this crisis has been raging for 5 days. The Americans took out Qasem Soleimani the early hours of Friday morning, and still he hasn't, we haven't heard his voice. He's put out a small statement on Sunday night on his return from Mystique. So the question was, well, why wasn't he in front of MPs today, taking this by the horns and showing the country leadership? I think there's a charitable reason and an uncharitable reason. The charitable reason is the government's approach all along since the early hours of Friday morning has been to try and de-escalate this, trying to sort of calm down tensions, pour water on the fire, and therefore not having the Prime Minister front and centre issuing grand phrases would be not a bad thing to do. The uncharitable reason is because right now, the truth is, Boris Johnson doesn't really have his own foreign policy on very much at all. He's been Prime Minister for 6 months. The entirety of that 6 months has been spent dealing with the EU. He has a Brexit policy, but he doesn't have a post-Brexit foreign policy. We've got no idea what he really personally thinks on anything from Iran, the US, various issues in Africa, Libya, and he hasn't really had that time to formulate one. If he came in front of the House of Commons today, he would have been asked questions like, what if this escalates? What if the Iranians hit back? Will you stand with America in military action? Will you stand with the EU? So far, the EU's position on the Iranian nuclear deal, which is to try and encourage Iran to keep hold of the Iranian deal rather than the American one, which is to rip the whole thing up. So he needs to really think this all through. If you're a leader, and politics has a funny habit of doing this, events actually dictate what you have to say and do, when you say and do it, not your own private musings.
Amazing scene, from Iran today as well. Obviously, the reported stampede at the funeral of this top general. Events are already moving. This only compounds anger in the region, doesn't it? We saw there in one of the headlines that the UK troops are on standby, UK interests are on alert. And in many respects, the British government doesn't have an answer to it.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Wallace had to come to the House to update. We have these horrifically, worrying scenes. I think up to 50 people died at the funeral today. The White House has just done another briefing on the issue, and it does feel that our Prime Minister is missing in action on it, and I think it is the latter. I do think number 10 are thinking, we don't have a strategy on this. It would be very risky for the Prime Minister to make his big debut on international issues as Prime Minister, and he may go off script at the dispatch box. Tom made the point at the earlier press preview that doing a statement is very different from doing Prime Minister's questions, which is coming tomorrow. On a statement, you actually have to be quite well briefed. You have to take questions from your own side. You have to know the detail of it. Now, Boris Johnson is not a man blessed on the detail. When he was Foreign Secretary as well, he's got his own previous gaffes on Iran. Nazanin Zahawi-Ratcliffe is still in Iran. I think her daughter is just about to start school. Lots of people are still campaigning for her release. So I think this is very problematic. But it is a pretty bad look that we have a new Prime Minister with a huge majority who's been sort of lauded as having done something great, and he can't actually come to the House and answer possibly one of the biggest issues on the planet right now.
Well, PM Keys is coming tomorrow. Jeremy Corbyn, I have a terrible feeling he's going to ask all the wrong questions and talk about the past, talk about the assassination, rather than talking about the future. He really wants to hold Boris Johnson to account. He needs to say to you, what will you do in X, Y, and Z? And that alone will make the PM sweat tomorrow.
Okay, well, let's move on to Labour, shall we? All over the newspapers too, the runners and riders.